Hello, everybody. I see there's some people joining still, so we'll give everybody a moment to join. For those of you who don't know me, while we're going over and just waiting for people, um, my name's Nick Langlois. I'm one of the training specialists here at Gravity, and I'll be running the object formatting training today. I have a colleague, John, who he's posted in the chat there if you see it. He'll be helping out with the webinar as far as monitoring the chat and Q&A throughout the session. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar presentation, please feel free to ask them in the chat, ask them in the Q&A area, and John will get to those and be able to answer any of those questions. So we'll just give some people a few more moments to join here, and then we'll get started. All right, so we're going to be going over today object formatting. So with that, what we'll be covering is we'll be covering the object properties. So this is how we can keep things as printable, keep things as non-printable, how we'll be able to go through the different style area or style panel of the actual object itself. We'll cover drawing objects, uploading new images, how we can use and create an org chart. I'll go over how we can update the master page images as well. So this would be, for example, on our front cover and those different areas. Lastly, what we'll cover is we'll go over the chart objects. So what that means is the chart objects are the actual charts represented in your report. I'll show you how we can set those up and create them. Okay. So the first thing that I wanted us to go over in today's session is the properties of an object. So if I wanted to click on the three dots of any object in the report, I can hover over properties and click on it, and we'll be able to make something printable or non-printable in this area. So if I wanted to toggle on non-printable and click save, you'll notice I get this red circle that says non-printable object. This lets me know that this object will not print when I go ahead and I generate the report. Okay. By default, any PDFs that are brought into your report are brought in as non-printable objects. So if you wanted to have them print in your report, you will need to click on the three dots, go to the properties, and toggle them on as printable. And once you click save, you'll see that disappear from the object icon. As well, in the properties area, if we wanted to change the name of the object, we could change it here. We're able to go and change the workflow of the object if we wanted to. So if you had if you're working in, for example, a budget book, and you wanted to change it between different departmental workflows, you could do that as well. Or you could, if more so in an ACFR, you'll have just probably one workflow. It'll be default brought in. If you bring in a new object, it will use that default workflow. Next, I want to pay attention to the style area. So when I click on style, you'll see the first option we have is start on new page. So what this option does is if I have the start on new page enabled, it will force it to a new page of our report. However, if I turn this off, it will continue from the previous page if there was space. Okay. We also have the option of don't break between pages. And what this does is the don't break between pages it's more often used in a spreadsheet. So if you have a spreadsheet that say it's 3/4 of a page long and you really want all that information to stay together, but you might not necessarily want it to always start on a new page, you can use the don't break between pages option, and that will keep it together. So if there's room for it to be on the last page, it will stay there. If there's no room, it will force it to the next page in order to keep it together. If we are not having something start on a new page, we have the option to apply a separator. Keep in mind it's in millimeters. So in the event that sometimes you'll have a spreadsheet that comes after an editor document and you may notice that perhaps the spreadsheet title is a little bit too close to the last paragraph of the editor document, you can apply a separator in millimeters. So we usually recommend going anywhere between 3, maybe 5 millimeters. Do a print preview of that folder, and you can check and see if it's an adequate distance from the editor object or if you need to increase it further. If we have the option of something to start on a new page, you'll notice we have start numbering at and page numbering style. Now, quite frequently in an introductory section, perhaps you want your introductory page numbers to be in Roman numeral characters. You could achieve this by starting the numbering at 1, going to the page numbering style and changing it to that Roman numeral characters. Upon clicking save, your whole report would then be in Roman numeral characters. So what you would have to do is you'd have to go into your financial section or wherever you want the Roman numeral characters to stop, and you would change these Roman numerals, and you would change it back to the regular numerical characters. Now you can start the numbering over again at 1, or if you leave this area blank, as I've done here, it will continue where the Roman numerals left off, but switch the numbering style. Okay? Now, please remember, if you have any questions, you can ask them in the chat or in the Q&A area. Okay. We'll also have time at the end of the presentation for us to ask any questions, and I'll be able to answer them. The next thing I wanted to go over was the object style. Okay. So the most often used numbering style, or object styles rather, are 2 balanced columns, 2 columns, image break text, image wrap text left, and image wrap text right. So each of these has a different function for it. So I'm going to start off with the 2 columns. 2 columns, what it will do is if you have a editor document, as you see it in your report regularly, it will be standardized in the 1 column text. Applying 2 columns will have it start the same way, but it'll apply 2 columns to the report, going down the left-hand side first, and then going to the right side of the page. The option for 2 balanced columns will balance the text. So let's say that you had a editor document that it generated on the whole left side, but then only halfway down the right side, and you followed it up by an image. In this case, perhaps you want the image to break the text there, and you wanted it to be the whole width of the page. You could apply it 2 balanced columns, and it will balance the columns to be even with each other, which is more optimal when we're trying to insert an image that will span the whole width of the page. After that, you can see we have that image break text. Image break text, what this does is if you have an editor document and then you have an image and another editor document, perhaps you want to use that image break text to ensure that that image stays in between those 2 editor documents. Image wrap text left is used if we want the image on the left-hand side of the report and the text to wrap around it. And then image wrap text right, the image will be on the right-hand side of the report and the text will wrap around it on that side. Okay. The next thing I wanted to go over was the master pages. So you'll have a various number of master pages throughout your report, and in that area, you can always check and see which master pages are being used depending on which area by clicking on the object style of the properties and checking the master page. Now, if you start off in a new section, perhaps you'll have a different master page applied. For example, I'll have body portrait here. And if I go to the next object in my report, you'll probably notice that it's going to have the master page of following. So what this means is that whenever you see following throughout your report, it's going to continuously look above to the next object to find an object that does not have the following tag as the master page. Once it finds one, in our case, it's set our letter of transmittal that has the option or the master page option of body portrait, it will copy that page and use that same master page. So in reality, even though my population growth chart data is set to following, we can count on it being body portrait because it's following the letter of transmittal. Now, the different master pages in your report, as you saw, mine are a little bit different, of course, but you may have some for specifically for PDFs. You may have some for specific areas in your report, statistical sections or areas where you don't want to have a portrait or a cover. You'll also have options for cover back and front cover. So these are the applied most frequently to the front cover and the back cover, and usually have images. Along with different areas in your report like dividers, you'll have the divider master page applied to those areas, and they could be specified strictly by which section of the report it is. So it may not appear like DIV divider like mine. It could say financial section divider, intro section divider, and be more dialed in on what certain area of the report divider it is. Now, what I wanted to show you is if I go to the front cover, for example, and I go to my cover page and go to the properties and check the style, we'll see that we have the cover front cover. Okay. And if I open up the cover page of my report, we can see that it's completely blank, but it's that master page that is going to control how this object looks when it's generated. So if I click on the three dots of the cover page, go down to generation, from there I can click on print preview to see how this document will look once it's generated in our report. While this is generating, you can always take a look in the inbox area and watch the process as it goes through, making sure that there are no errors involved during generation. Once it's generated, you can see that I'm able to take a look, and this is the master page that is applying all of this information to my cover page. The next thing I wanted to note is what if we wanted to change the picture on my cover page, right? What if I didn't want to see this picture of Earth and I wanted to change it to something different? I'm able to do that by noting the template that my report falls under. And if you're not sure what the template is that your report uses, you're able to click on the three dots of your report, go down to properties, and you'll see the template file. So in my case, it's the ACFR template v4. If I exit out of this, I'll be able to go to the settings area and I should see templates here. If you don't see templates here, it's a possibility that you don't have permissions in order to view this, and you'd be able to speak to your admin user in order to ensure that you have permissions to do this. From there, I can click on templates. And remember when we looked up ACFR template v4, I'll want to click on it and then go over to master page images. Clicking on this, I'll be able to see the different master pages in my report. I can see cover, front cover, and I can now see the different document in here. We can see the primary logo that is applied at the bottom and that Earth JPEG. So you want to make sure that when you're bringing in these different, if you're changing these images, that you're using a PNG or JPEG file in order to replace these. You want to keep the approximation of the size roughly the same size as the one that's currently in there, or it might not focus correctly. If you are wanting to use a specific image that doesn't focus correctly, you can always reach out to support and they'll be able to refocus it on what you're trying. So if I wanted to replace this image, I can click on the pencil icon, find the image inside my computer that I want to use, click open, and it'll start bringing in that new image. So we can see that the image is now in here. If I now close this area and generate a new print preview of this document, we'll notice that the front image is now changed. If you already have the previous print preview open, you don't have to go down and redo the print preview through the generation. You're able to click on the three lines and refresh. Again, you can follow this process inside of the inbox area, and once it's finished, you'll see it populate. Please remember that you're always able to ask questions in the chat and Q&A area. and John will be able to answer them. So you can see here that now it's generated a new image in this area, and you'll notice it's a little bit fuzzy and not focused in on what I was trying to accomplish. That's because of the fact that when I went into the templates, and I go back to the ACVR master page images, the front cover is a completely different size now. So that's what I meant by when we put in an image that's not the size that was previously there, there's chances that it doesn't focus correctly. If I 100% wanted to use this image, I'd have to reach out to support and they would be able to refocus it on the specific area I'm trying to capture. You want to make sure that this area you're using as the highest definition images you can as possible as well, to avoid any scenarios with the fuzziness you see here. The next thing that I wanted to cover in today's webinar is going over how we can add in different drawing objects. So if I wanted to add a drawing object into my report, I would click on the three dots, and I can add child or add sibling, depending on if I'm wanting to put it inside a folder or not. I'll go to add child in this case, go down to drawing, and here I'm going to give it a title. If you want to change the workflow, you're able to do that as well. And then upon clicking create, you're going to notice that it's going to populate a gray and white checkered background. Now that we can see this gray and white checkered background has been shown, this is my drawing area, okay? Whatever we have as our drawing area is what Gravity thinks we want to generate when we go through. So you can see right now that it's 10 by 7.5. That's quite large, and it's probably going to take up the majority of a page. Perhaps we don't want it to be that large and we want it to be something more like 5 by 4. We are able to change the drawing area. How I can do that is I can click on File, go down to Page Setup, and from there I'll want to change the standard 4 by 3 to Custom. Now we can see that it's 10 by 7.5, and I could change it to be 5 by 4. If you prefer it to be in a different unit, you can change the units of measurement here. Once I click apply, you're going to see that my margins have changed size. So now we have that 5 by 4. And this is a more realistic drawing area. If we wanted to insert an image into our drawing object to be used throughout our report, we can click on Insert, hover over Image, and from there we can click on Upload from Computer. I can then select the image I want to use, and once I click Open, we'll see that the image comes into our report. So if I want this drawing to take up the entire 5 by 4, I'm going to have to ensure that I drag it and make it that entire 5 by 4 area. Keep in mind that any area inside of here that you do not use is going to be blank space in your report. As remember I had said earlier that Gravity thinks this 5 by 4 area is what we want to show. So the nice thing about this too is we're able to use the gray and white checkered area as a little bit of a separator if we wanted to. So let's say we had used that previous image wrap text that we saw earlier in our presentation today. But I noticed that it was wrapping a little bit too close, and I didn't like how close the words were to my image. I could apply a manual separator to it by dragging in my image to a comfortable distance away from the text, manually apply that separator. If I wanted to replace this image, say you had an image that you had in your report and in the new year you wanted to replace it with something different, you'd be able to click on that image and you can see you have this replace image button here. I could then click on replace image and upload a new one in its place from my computer. I'm going to go ahead and delete this image out of my report for now because I want to show you how we can use this area as an organizational chart as well. So if you already have an organizational chart in your report using the drawing object, you're able to continue editing it the same way I'm going to show you them right now. So If I wanted to create that first text bubble that had the organizational chart, I can click on the shapes icon here. From here, you can see there's a number of different shapes we can use in our report, and you can pick the one that best represents what you're trying to achieve. I'm going to go ahead and pick this rectangle, and then I can drag and drop and see how big it is. From there, I can adjust it using these different areas. If I want to make it a bit smaller or a bit larger, I can do that. When I clicked on it there, you'll notice that that red line populates. That's letting me know that my new rectangle is centered in the 5x4 area. If I wanted to then continue to edit this object, I can go ahead and change the fill color if I wanted it to be a little bit different. I could also go ahead and change the border color of this drawing object if I wanted to. You'll see it changes based on what I've selected. And one thing that's important to keep in mind about this area is that it's not representative of the different text formatting styles you have in your report. So if I wanted to change this to be gray with a red border, but in your text formatting area, the only colors you have available are yellow, you would still be able to have this red border. The reason being is the organizational chart and the drawing object in general are not don't abide by those same rules. So you are able to have whatever colors in this area you'd like. Next, if I wanted to add in a text in this area, I can click on the text box, drag and drop into my text area, and begin typing in the name of my drawing object. So you can see that it's slightly too big for this drawing area. I'm able to highlight this, and I can change the font size. I can bold it. I can change the font color if I want to. And then I'm also able to drag this area a little bit further if I want. If I wanted to have this centered instead of going to the left, I can click on the more options here and change the alignment from left to centered. From there, I'm also able to have it go to the top, or I can change these areas to go to the bottom, whichever is easiest for you and how you want that represented. I am also able to drag this organizational chart text box and change it to also be centered. You can see those two red lines populating. Now that I have that first area brought in, I'm going to want to continue adding additional boxes or additional shapes in order to achieve my organizational chart. I'll click on the shape, go to shapes again, and this time I'm going to select a slightly different one. I'll bring it in, and you'll notice that once I have this in, I'm able to drag this, and I have a red line letting me know that I'm in line with the edge of my organizational text box. From there, you are able to continue editing if you wanted to change the border or fill color. And if we wanted to ensure that we had the exact same size box on this side, instead of recreating the shape and hoping that we can get it as close as we can, we are able to actually copy this one. And you will be able to copy if you have your organizational chart already in. You could select one of your text boxes and copy it as well. We aren't able to copy this way, but we are able to use Command C and Command V or Control C and Control V, depending on if you have Windows or Mac. From there, I can slide these into place to ensure that they're in the exact same spots on either side and drop it. Next, what I'll want to do is I want to be able to add in the different transition lines from these areas. I can select the line option here, and you'll see that if I hover over this area, we get these different purple circles that populate. I can drag from those purple circles to the purple circles of the other areas, and we can see that those areas populate. If I click escape, you can see that in this scenario, it's not the best option to have this single line. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this. And if we go to the upside down triangle beside the line tool, we can select a different line. So we have the option for arrow, elbow connector, curve, polyline, and scribble. I'm going to select the elbow connector in this scenario, and you'll notice that I'm able to drag it much like I did the regular line. I can do this on both areas. Say you wanted to have a elbow connector, but you wanted it to have an arrow at the end. You can do that as well by selecting the elbow connector, and you'll notice line start and line end here. From there, I'm able to change these to an arrow. If I wanted to change the line color, I can select the line, change the color to something that better fits what I was trying to achieve. From there, I'd be able to continuously add in text and additional boxes for my organizational chart until I achieve the result I was looking for. Please remember you are able to ask questions in the Q&A and chat area, and John will be able to answer any questions you may have. The next thing I wanted to go over, and the final thing for today, is the chart object. Now, in order for us to create a chart object, we do need to have chart data. So if I double click to open my spreadsheet here, we can see that I have a small population growth chart. Now, I want this to be represented maybe as a bar graph instead of this. So what I can do is the first step we need to do is we need to make this into a named range. So the same thing is done when we're going to print preview spreadsheets. We'll click on data, we'll go down to named ranges, and from there we can select the add a range. It's important that when we're naming the range that we're either keeping it as one word or we separate it using underscores. So I'm going to name this chart test data. Next, I'll be able to click on this 4 squares to select a data range. I'll hover over and highlight the area I want to encompass in my data. Click OK, and then done. Next, what I'll want to do is I'll close this area, click on the 3 dots where I want to put in my chart object, go to add sibling, and hover over chart. Once I've selected chart, I'll be prompted to create a new chart title. So I'm going to name this population growth, and we can change the workflow if we'd like. Next, I'm going to specify the source object. So this is the spreadsheet in which this chart data is coming from. I'll select that chart data. Then we'll select the source range. So this is the named range that you had made for your chart data. I'll select chart test data. We do have the option to select a title range if that's something we had made when we were in our named ranges, but I didn't do that, and I am able to make a title inside of the chart object. Once I'm happy with this area, I'll click create, and we're going to see that it's going to populate the chart by default as a line graph. If I wanted to change it away from a line graph, I'm able to click on the templates area here. You'll notice that it squishes in my population growth chart, and it makes it a little bit harder to see. So whenever we're working in our chart object, we always recommend just collapsing the report tree so you have a larger work area. Once I'm in this area, I can then filter between different things like horizontal columns, stacked bars. If we had two different sets of data represented, they'd be stacked. We can add in just a basic bar. We could change it to a pie. You can see there's a number of different pie options in here. Columns, if we wanted it to be 3D columns, we can do that. Stacked percentages. You can see that there's a number of different options here. You can also change it to be a combination if you have multiple sets of data in this area. I'm going to go ahead and select the basic bar chart in our example. Once I'm happy with the option I've selected, I can then go to Customize Chart. We're going to focus on the simple options for today, but if there's something that you're trying to achieve in your report and you're unable to, you can always reach out to support and it may be something in the advanced. Now that I'm in my population growth chart and I'm starting to work in it, the first thing is to check the titles. So we can see we have that population growth chart title, and this is automatically generated from what we call this object. So you may need to change it in the event that the object isn't the same as the chart title. If we want to add in a chart subtitle, we could add one in this area, or alternatively, we could leave this area blank. You'll notice that my y-axis is says values here, and this should be the x-axis. Sometimes when we're using the bar chart, we'll have to go in and turn on and off the inverted axis to show it how we would want to. Now that it's correctly showing the y-axis title in this area, I'll go ahead and delete it as I don't want to have any y-axis title in my report. You can see we have the option to undo the changes we've done by clicking on this back reverse or counterclockwise arrow, and it'll bring back the values, or I can remove it again. If you're having any questions about what a specific line item inside of the simple or advanced features does, you can hover over the question mark and it'll give you a little bit more information about that specific line. Next, once I click on General, you'll see that we have the option to adjust the chart width and chart height. If I wanted to make it a specific amount because of how I wanted to represent my chart, you can do that. Or alternatively, if I undo these and they're both set to auto, Gravity is going to populate it as what it thinks will look best to represent our chart. Next, once we get into appearance, this is where we can really start making changes to our chart to make it look how we want it. You'll notice the first area we have is the title style. So I'll be able to change this if I wanted it to be Times New Roman, if I wanted to change the size of the title, I could do that as well. And I can also make it appear bold or italicize it if I wanted to. We are able to change the text color as well. You can choose one of the options in this area, or alternatively, if there's a specific color that you use for your organization, you could paste the color code in this area to ensure that the title is uniform with the rest of the report. I'm going to select this purple option here and then move down into the next area. If you had a subtitle, you'd be able to change it as well. As I continue down, you can see we get to the series colors. Now, we only have one series color represented inside of our report. However, we are able to click on it and change it to a different color as well. Keep in mind you are able to change it with a color code if you have a specific color you'd like to use. If you had multiple sets of data, you'd be able to continue to go through changing these ones. However, because we only have one set of data, we don't need to worry about these. As I scroll further down, you'll see that we get to the chart area. The background color is currently set to 6Fs, which is white. If I wanted to change that to another color, I could do that. Or alternatively, I can leave it how it was by clicking the undo button. If we wanted our area to have a border on it, we could apply a border, and you'll notice that it's generating a border there now. Currently, you can see that the border is 90-degree angles aligned with our chart. However, if I wanted to soften those corners, I could apply a border corner radius in this area, and you'll see it softens those corners. We are also able to apply a border color in this area. I'm going to choose that same purple, and you'll notice now that we have that same purple inside of our border. We are able to go down and change the plot area as well. So if we wanted this to be a different color, you can see it changes the plot area color, and we can add in a background image URL or change the border width. I'm going to resort this back to being the same color as my background color, and that will be applied by it saying auto. Please keep in mind if you have any questions with the chart object or anything we're covering today, you are able to ask those questions in the audience chat or the Q&A, and my colleague John will be able to assist you with those. Next, once I get to the axes area, we are able to invert them. We're able to change the x-axis title in this area. So if I wanted to add in an x-axis title, this is where we would find that, not in the titles area. You could change the same things as you could with the titles though, changing the x-axis font size, making it bold or italic, or changing the color. As I scroll further down, you can see that we have the type of linear. When I go back to my population growth chart, you can see that it's represented in years. If your chart, for example, had words here instead of a number, you would want to change this area of the x-axis to category. With it being linear, it will use strictly numbers in this area. However, if you wanted it to say words, we would use category, and you would see those words populate. You can have these areas appear on the opposite side of the chart. You're able to reverse the direction, and you can apply both of them if you'd like. As I continue down, we have the same options for the y-axis, where I can change the y-axis title style by changing it from a different font size, font style, bold, italic, or changing the color. As I get further down, we can see we have type linear, and in this case, we'll want to keep it linear. We also have the option for opposite side of the chart, reverse direction, and both for the y-axis as well. Next, in the data series, this is where another way that we're able to change the how our chart is represented. So again, I only have the one set of data series as residents. However, if we had multiple, we'd be able to change the series type to line, column, area, and you would see it change in this area. So if I, for example, I wanted to change this one to be an area, you'll see that it gets represented as area. So if you had multiple sets of data being represented, you could theoretically have a line graph over top of a bar chart. If I change this back to auto, it's going to use the same one I had called out when I selected the template. If we wanted to change any of the color, negative color, color by point, or dash style if we were using a line graph, we can do that as well. You'll notice if I do change this briefly to a line and I can change the style, we could do a short dash. We can change this to a dot. There's multiple options in this area. We do have the option to enable point markers as well, or if we want to hide those, we can leave those off. I'm going to change this back to being auto so I can keep my bar chart. Next, when I get to value labels, I can enable the data labels for all series, and we'll see that they populate at the tops of my bar graph. I can change the font size, color, and font weight if I didn't want it to be bold or black or have a font size of 11. Next, once I get to the legend, I'm able to enable the legend, and you can see it populate here. I can turn it off. I'm also able to change the position of the legend. So we can see right now it's set to horizontal alignment. However, I can change it to the left, change it to the right, or I could leave it centered. For our legend, we also have the option of changing the appearance. So if we wanted to change the text style, we could change that, the font size, make it bold or unbold. We're also able to give it its own background color. So if you had a rather large legend that you wanted to appear a specific way and have it more like its own entity, you could change the background color in this area, and you can see it changes. If we had wanted to give it a border, we could do that as well. And we can change the border color in addition to that. You're also able to do the border radius as we had done with the actual charts border. I'm going to go ahead and turn my legend off for now, as I don't think it's necessary for us to have one. Next, we'll have the tooltip and exporting areas. The tooltips control these different areas in our report where we have these tooltips, and you're able to turn them off if you'd like. Under exporting, we can enable the exporting of our charts, and you can see when I click on the three lines here, we have the export and import settings. Next, we have the localization area. And this is important to note, as you'll notice that if we don't have any decimals in our chart data currently, but they would be represented by this decimal point. Right now, we can see that we are able to change the thousand separator. So right now it is separated by a comma. And if I wanted to change that, or it's separated by a space, and if I wanted to change it to a comma, I could remove that space, add in the comma, and we'll see that it changes here. By default, it is going to show it as a space. So you'll always have to come in and change it to a comma the first time. The last thing to show you about these chart objects is when I go to the credits, we're able to enable credits. And you'll notice down at the bottom here, it says now made with IGM Gravity. You're able to change this to anything you'd like. And you'll notice that when I hover over it, I have the option to go to a link. You can set a specific link inside this area. And if you have an online version of your report, you'll be able to go ahead and have this version connect to a page. So let's say we had this population growth chart and somebody wanted to know a little bit more about the population growth. You'd be able to link it to a specific website page on your website that would give them more information about that, kind of like another little area for them to learn more about. Now, these have highlighted the simple functions of the chart in our presentation today. However, if I try and exit out of this area, you'll notice that it lets me know I have unsaved changes. The chart object is one of the things inside Gravity that we do need to save in order for us to keep what we've done. So I need to click on the three lines, click on Save, and once I get that Save Chart success, I'll be able to exit out, open up, expand my report tree, and see my population growth chart. Now in our webinar today, we've covered the object properties, going through the different areas of our report, the drawing objects, how we can make an organizational chart, how we can bring in new images. We've gone over master page images and how we're able to change those different master page images, how we're also able to change the actual image on them. Lastly, we went over chart objects, how we can create a chart and set it up, and we also went over how we're able to edit the simple functions of the chart. This does bring us to the conclusion of our webinar for today. So I'm going to wait in the chat for a while and see if there's any questions involved. You'll do notice that John has posted a webinar survey, and I can also go down and you can see the QR code here as well if you find that easier. This webinar survey is related to today's webinar, and if you have any questions or feedback for us, we'll find it greatly appreciated. I'm going to hang on the call for a little bit longer to see if there's any questions. Please feel free to ask any questions in the chat and Q&A, and I'll be sure to answer them. Other than that, I want to thank you all for joining our webinar today, and keep note that John has just posted our next webinar, which is on roll forward of the budget book. That will be next week on the 16th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Hope everybody has a great rest of their day, and I will remain for a little while in order to answer any questions. Yes. Yeah, I will send out a follow-up email with the webinar, the link to the video of the webinar, and also some other additional items, like we have an object formatting brochure that I'll send as well, and some other things that might help you. I'll also include a link to registration for our next webinar inside that email as well. I will have to wait for the webinar video to render before I can send that, but I will be sending it this week for sure. Not a problem, Carla. All right. Doesn't look like there's any questions left. So as I'm talking here, please feel free to reach out with any questions. If you have any questions that you think of after the fact, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're here to help. But other than that, I hope that everybody has a great rest of their day and a great weekend ahead of them. And I will send out that email either today or tomorrow. Thank you for joining.